Today I'm just going to give you an insight into Tasmania's access into Korea and Japan, and we've been very fortunate that we've had several market access gains into these overseas markets, and that has put it in good stead into the future, and it's potentially a model that other industries across Australia are also looking at. Market access is a complicated and time-consuming process, and I guess the interesting thing from our perspective is that there is a lot of focus on imports into Australia, but we now have the ability to look at it from the other perspective of actually trying to import into other countries. And I guess this case study is quite interesting because Korea and Japan are potentially two of the more difficult countries to get market access into. So we can give our experience of our market access. Tasmania's export market development stemmed from the fact that we've got a long-standing export culture, and most of you here would know that Tasmania for many decades was known as the Apple Isle. Now we like to think ourselves as the Cherry Isle, and I suspect maybe in another 10 or 20 years we'll be known as the Berry Isle. But our climate is suitable for growing premium quality temperate fruit. There's been significant growth and investment in the cherry industry in Tasmania since 2000, and that's largely been through the fact that many apple growers are diversified into cherries. And the reason for that is that Tasmania is the last cherry producing region in the Southern Hemisphere. So that gives us a niche window into Northern Hemisphere markets, which is more advantageous than even New Zealand or Chile, who finish about 2 weeks prior to us. So that's where we've seen our niche window, and because of our costs of production and Bass Strait in particular, we need to focus on these high niche end value markets, which we perceive Japan and Korea are. And certainly when we started our market access application into South Korea, it had the highest standard of living in the OECD, and it fitted our target market really well. We also knew that we had to develop a diversity of export markets, and that was what we formed our export strategy. And that stemmed also from the fact in 2005 we lost market access into Taiwan, which accounted for 70% of our fruit or our cherry exports. And although we were able to gain access quite quickly compared to our mainland counterparts who took nearly 5 years to regain market access, we knew then that we had to ensure that we had a diversity of export markets in case we lost market access again. And that's recently happened. As of the 1st of January, we've lost market access to Thailand, which is our fourth biggest market for cherries. And as I said before, we're capturing niche export opportunities based on our reputation for premium fruit. I guess Tasmania's lucky in the fact that we have a unique quarantine status, and we've already heard the fact that we have area freedom from fruit fly, and that certainly has given us a significant advantage when we're trying to gain market access. Our market access is very comparable to New Zealand's. New Zealand doesn't have fruit fly, and we've been very fortunate in the fact that New Zealand have actually tried to gain market access into Korea and Japan for cherries prior to us. So we were able to learn from their market access activities how we could actually gain market access as well. Our risk perception from an importing country's perception is the fact that we're an island. We can actually control our quarantine and biosecurity really well. And for countries such as Taiwan and Japan, which are actually islands themselves, they relate very much to our island status. So that also puts us in good stead. Our engagement with the general public in Tasmania is also very important, and we work very hard on that. In fact, this year we've run fruit fly commercials on commercial television stations in Tasmania, really highlighting to people how important our quarantine and biosecurity status is. What's also made our market access applications a little bit easier is the fact that cherries are counter-seasonal to Northern Hemisphere, whereas apples basically can have a shelf life of 10-12 months. Cherries don't have a shelf life. Once they are picked and packed, they need to be moved very quickly. So therefore, growers and industries in the Northern Hemisphere don't see us as trying to compete with them. So it does make it a little bit easy when you're looking at gaining market access. Market access, for those who have been involved in it, can be a very time-consuming process, and I'll actually go in more depth to that. But we've been very, very fortunate in the fact that we've actually had quite a few market access achievements in recent years. We did get market access to China for apples back in 1997, and unfortunately that was an unworkable commercial protocol, which is also something that does happen, and that's why you need to have a very strong relationship with DAF and AQUIS to ensure that all the protocols that we get are very commercially viable. But going through, obviously our area of freedom from fruit fly is recognised by many countries, and having that recognition of area freedom certainly assists us in gaining and maintaining our market access status. I won't go through all of those, but as you can see, we've been quite proactive in our market access activities. The strategy for market access is quite simple. You need to work collaboratively, and we have always had a model, of which is actually now the OMAR model, or the Office of Horticultural Market Access model, is the fact that you have to work at three major things. The government-to-government relationships, you have to have strong science and research, and it must be commercially focused. And those things have to be developed all at the one time to have a good market access. From government to government, it's really important that high-level negotiations are done at the DAF level or DFAT level with the importing country. And we back up that and provide all the information that they want, and we have close relationships with DAF during those negotiations. We also have very strong support from our Tasmanian state government, and that does make a big difference. And in 2006 and 2008, our state government led fruit industry trade missions to North Asia. Now, they were to underpin all the activities being done at a federal government level. So these negotiations were there to support and start relationships, and that's very, very important, that we have good relationships, Tasmania as a state, with other countries through MAF or BAFIC or whoever we're dealing with. The other thing that we also have is we try and develop a strong relationship with our ag counsellors in the different countries, and also Austrade are a very valuable resource. Their on-the-ground knowledge assists us greatly, particularly in relation to the commercial aspects of it. Here are just some photos from overseas. Our Minister David Llewellyn, who's no longer our Minister, but he was certainly a strong advocate of market access and good, strong relationship with our trading partners. And that's very important that you develop those to ensure that if there is an issue, then we can address that issue very quickly. And that was very evident in the Taiwan situation. When we did lose market access, our state minister came over, and literally within a couple of months we had regained access, and that was just due to our good relationships. Good science and research. We have a strong state Department of Primary Industries which supports our research, and we work collaboratively with them. The Tasmanian Institute of Agriculture, once again, liaise very closely with industry and the State Department in ensuring that research is focused on maintaining our biosecurity and ensuring that we've got best practice. It's also important that we preempt potential issues, and for those who deal in horticulture, we know that any country at any time can change the rules, and in the situation of Thailand, they can review their quarantine procedures, and we need to ensure that we can preempt some of those and have the satisfactory science which we can present to them if we need to. I have used AQUIS there, but state AQUIS involvement is really important, and we're very lucky in Tasmania in the fact that provision of AQUIS services is actually done through Quarantine Tasmania, so we have a strong working relationship with them. We also engage growers in a lot of our research trials, and that's so they can understand what we're trying to do, but also we need to understand that trials in the field are going to reflect more closely what's going to actually happen than trials based in a laboratory. And particularly when we did work in Japan, they were very much focused on in-field trials, so we got that replication of data. Once again, the local quarantine support's very important, and we have a very close working relationship with quarantine. We brief all new quarantine officers about the Tasmanian industry, about our focus on export, and we also ensure that we have pre-season and post-season briefings. We get them in with the agronomists, so we understand all the pest and disease pressures, and once again we're always looking at ensuring that we're preempting any potential issues which might arise. The local quarantine are also very good at looking after our visiting quarantine officers from different countries, and I think that's also put us in very good stead. We often know that quarantine officers who come out to audit the Tasmanian industry can potentially be future leaders of quarantine. So they come out here, we give them a good experience, and they really appreciate where we're coming from, and having the local quarantine support really reinforces that.